Coming up today, hundreds of schools across Korea will shut for the week in an effort to prevent the further spread of the MERS virus. Bowing to public pressure, the government reveals the names of 24 hospitals affected by MERS. Korea's rival parties are in a collision course over the confirmation hearing of Prime Minister nominee Hwang Kyo-ahn. The main opposition wants it delayed, but the ruling party says it must go ahead as planned. Plus, Sepp Blatter is sucked further into the widening scandal surrounding FIFA after reports emerge of his discussions over a $10 million payment designed to win South Africa the 2010 World Cup. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Monday, June 8th here in Seoul. Thanks as always for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. We start with the latest on the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome or MERS outbreak in Korea. Over 1,800 schools and daycare centres across the country will temporarily shut as a preventative measure against the MERS outbreak that has so far killed 5 people, infected more than 60 and left well over 2,000 more under quarantine. As fears continue to grow, the government bowed to public pressure on Sunday and disclosed the names of 24 MERS-affected hospitals. Connie Kim starts us off.
In the wake of criticism that the government was generating fear by withholding information on the hospitals designated to treat people with Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, Acting Prime Minister Choi Kyung-hwan revealed the names of all 24 hospitals affected by the disease.
6 of the hospitals where patients have been diagnosed include Pyeongtaek St. Mary's Hospital and Samsung Medical Center. The other 18 places where patients with the disease pass through.
Choi reassured the public that as all MERS patients are treated in special containment wards, there is no possibility of the infection spreading to the general population. Vowing all-out efforts to combat the viral disease, Choi said the government will ensure better cooperation among regional authorities, the public sector, and the military. Acknowledging that initial monitoring of suspected cases where people were quarantined at home wasn't carried out effectively, the acting prime minister also announced plans to match suspected patients with public servants from the respective region on a one-to-one basis, strengthening monitoring of people under quarantine. Authorities may also begin tracking the mobile phones of people under quarantine. Following the press briefing, the Health Ministry and 4 local governments announced plans to create a practical advisory group. Also, local governments, including Seoul and Gyeonggi-do Province, have been given permission to confirm MERS cases, whereas before only the Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention was authorized to do so. Korea's MERS alert level is at the 3rd highest, and there are no immediate plans to upgrade it. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Now, on the political front, Korea's 2 rival parties have vowed to work together to contain the spread of the MERS virus. At a meeting on the government's response to the outbreak, the ruling Saenuri Party and the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy agreed to establish a special bipartisan parliamentary committee to combat the viral disease. Both parties called for the creation of a body that includes representatives from local governments, education offices and the general public. The lawmakers also agreed to swiftly pass bills this month related to strengthening quarantine measures for the disease and improving disease response manuals. A month-long extraordinary session opens this Monday at the National Assembly, where Korea's main rival parties are expected to lock horns over various issues, including a confirmation hearing for Prime Minister nominee Hwang Kyo-ahn. The main opposition, New Politics Alliance for Democracy, is calling for the 3-day hearing to be postponed, saying Hwang failed to submit some documents requested by the Assembly's hearing committee. However, the ruling party rejected that request. Hwang is facing a series of allegations, including dodging the military draft, receiving a hefty paycheck at a local law firm, and alleged religious bias. Also at the session, the parties are likely to clash over a revised bill giving lawmakers the power to demand changes to presidential and other government ordinances. Prosecutors will summon a ruling party official for questioning on this Monday over suspicion of receiving illegal political funds from late businessman Song Wan-jong. The Saenuri Party lawmaker Hong Moon-jong is the third person of 8 politicians to be physically summoned following former Prime Minister Lee Hwang-kyo and Gyeongsangnam-do Governor Hong Jun-pyo, whose names appeared on the so-called bribery list. Song, before committing suicide in April, told a local newspaper that he gave 200 million won, that's roughly $180,000 in illicit political funds in 2012 to the Saenuri lawmaker Hong, who was then serving as the chief of President Park Geun-hye's election camp. Now, the MERS outbreak has sparked fresh worries over the slowing economy here in Korea, with analysts moving to downgrade their outlooks for this year. Some experts are even calling for an extra injection of cash to prop up growth. Shin Se-min reports.
The MERS outbreak is starting to tug on economic growth, raising concerns that it will further dent Korea's already sluggish domestic demand, potentially pushing growth into the 2% range. While Finance Minister Choi Kyung-hwan has released projections for growth of just over 3%, multiple financial organizations have already lowered their outlooks. Foreign investment bank Nomura revised down its projection to 2.5% from its earlier prediction of 3%. International Monetary Fund says 3.1%. The Korea Development Institute and the OECD both downgraded their outlooks to 3%, and the Bank of Korea says that it expects 3.1% growth this year. If the MERS outbreak continues to spread, economists believe that the domestic economy, already hit hard by falling exports, will suffer even more. Korea's tourism and retail industry has already been hit hard by the spread of the virus, as over 20,000 foreigners have canceled trips to the country. Experts say that the government should set aside extra funds to revitalize the domestic economy and that the central bank must consider another rate cut to prop up sentiment. The finance minister says, however, the government has no plans to create a supplementary budget to help contain the virus, nor does he think this is the time to talk about extra funds. The Bank of Korea says it is closely monitoring the economy and taking a number of issues into account, including household debt and the MERS outbreak, ahead of its monthly policy meeting this Thursday. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
More large Korean companies are upping their capital expenditures this year, despite the weak economic growth we're feeling here in Korea. A survey by the Korea Development Bank on 2,500 manufacturing and service firms shows they are planning to invest over $140 billion on new facilities and equipment this year. That's up 15% from what they spent last year. Large companies expressed a strong desire to spend more on capital expenditures, with an increase of over 16% expected this year. However, spending by small and mid-sized firms is expected to drop 11%, larger than last year's drop of 6%. Food commodity prices dropped in May, hitting a 6-year low thanks to a favourable outlook for this year's harvests. The UN's Food and Agriculture Organization says the food price index averaged 166 points last month, as the prices of cereals, dairy and meat all dipped in May. That's down 20% from a year earlier and the lowest level since September 2009. Now, the organisation predicts that global rice output will surge by over 1% from last year. This is largely driven by extra production in Asia. The Food Price Index tracks prices on international markets of 5 food commodity groups, namely cereals, meat, dairy products, vegetable oils and sugar. US President Barack Obama is calling on the other members of the G7 to stand up to Russia's aggression in Ukraine ahead of their summit in Germany. Making his opening remarks with German Chancellor Angela Merkel on Sunday, Obama said the G7 had to show Russian President Vladimir Putin that they are together on this issue. The US leader also heaped praise on Germany, calling their alliance one of the strongest the world has ever known. British Prime Minister David Cameron, also at this summit, said he hoped the G7 would present a united front on sanctions with Russia. Ukraine, ways to deal with the Islamic State group, and Greece's financial woes are likely to dominate the G7 talks. FIFA President Sepp Blatter is being drawn further into the widening corruption scandal engulfing his organisation. South Africa's Sunday Times reports that Blatter and then South African President Thabo Mbeki held discussions over $10 million that ultimately went to allegedly corrupt football executives as payback for supporting the country's successful 2010 World Cup bid. The paper says a 2007 email from FIFA Secretary-General Jerome Valcke to the South African government asks when the money is going to be transferred. FIFA has yet to respond to the report, but the South African government denies any kickbacks were given to FIFA officials. Now, Blatter announced that he was stepping down as FIFA president last week, with the world football body rocked by the biggest scandal in its history. Search and rescue operations continue on Malaysia's Mount Kinabalu, where dozens of climbers stranded after an earthquake were brought to safety on Sunday. The 5.9 magnitude quake that struck early on Friday is the worst to hit Malaysia in recorded history. According to DPA News, at least 18 people were killed in the quake and one person is still unaccounted for. Authorities have yet to identify the bodies aside from 6 elementary school students and their teacher from Singapore, so all 7 from Singapore. According to the South Korean embassy in Malaysia, a Korean couple in their 50s was among the 137 people rescued from the mountain top. Now, we all know walking provides a number of health benefits, but are you doing it right? Well, if you aren't, a team of Korean researchers is here to help. They've developed smart shoes that can help you walk properly. Our Hwang Kyo-ahn reports.
Walking. It's a simple skill that comes naturally to human beings, but you might be surprised to know that most of us aren't doing it right. Soon, with a pair of smart shoes developed by the Korea Research Institute of Standards and Science, you'll be able to easily correct the way you walk. The researchers put a thin layer of tactile sensors at the bottom of the shoe to measure the amount of pressure applied on the feet when a person walks. The sensors are connected to a set of LED lamps that light up in different colors according to the pressure points. So what exactly is the proper way to walk? First, you must stand tall with your back straight and your chest slightly lifted. And most importantly, your feet should always land heels first and then push off onto your toes. If your walk is correct, the smart shoes will light up in 3 different colors, red, blue, and green, to represent the pressure on the heel, the arch, and the front of your feet. But if you're not walking correctly, some of the colors will not light up. The shoes also come with a Bluetooth function, so users can check on their walking posture using a smartphone app. In addition, there's a rechargeable battery for the shoes that can last for up to 24 hours.
The LED color patterns for the shoes can be diverse, which makes them great for both safety and fashion-related purposes.
The scientists currently have 7 patents pending, and they're hoping to commercialize the technology. Hwang Kyo-ahn, Arirang News.
Now, robots often work in environments that are inaccessible to humans, in disaster zones or in heavily radiated areas, but they are unforgiving conditions where the machines are more susceptible to damage. However, researchers say they've come up with a new algorithm that allows robots to automatically adapt and compensate for such problems. Our Park Se-young reports.
When this robot breaks a leg, it's not out of commission. It's up and walking again in 40 seconds thanks to a new intelligent trial and error algorithm. It was created by French and American computer scientists who wanted robots to be able to adapt to and recover from damages just like humans and animals. So when the 6-legged robot loses a leg, it runs through its library of nearly 13,000 walking patterns, thousands of which only use 5 legs. The patterns are calculated in advance using a computer model, which shortens the trial and error process for the robot itself. Researchers also tested the algorithm on a robotic arm. Until now, the only way for a robot to become adaptable was the installation of expensive self-diagnosis sensors, whereas the algorithm is much more cost-effective. The team says its research, published in the journal Nature, could work for any kind of movement. That means robots will be better able to perform tasks in treacherous conditions, from nuclear accidents to earthquakes. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
Well, that's all we have for now. Hope your week is off to a wonderful start, and thank you, as always, for watching. Goodbye.